Welcome to the WWE Podcast, the most passionate and authentic wrestling analysis on the web. We've got you covered with every Raw, SmackDown, and NXT show, giving you a no bullshit opinion. We know you love wrestling. We do too. So let's get this show underway.
And that's the bottom line. What? 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
All right, everybody, welcome to the WWE Podcast on this Saturday, April 11th, 2020, as we all continue our new normals of sitting in our homes, catching up on Netflix, binging, and listening to wrestling, right? Watching wrestling in empty arenas, that's our new norm. And I think it will continue to be for at least several weeks, if not months. Dare I say months. It hurts me to say, but thank you guys for joining me as we have Anthony DeMarco, our co-host that I've been really wanting to talk to about some of the Mania matches, some of the big topics this week in wrestling. It really didn't dive into too much this week because honestly there's not a whole lot to talk about outside of the big items of McIntyre and Big Show and Bray Wyatt and Stroman, which is really the big items that we dove into. So if you're looking for a play-by-play, program-by-program, match-by-match review, we didn't do that for Braun SmackDown. We just hit on the big topics, and of course, he gave some of his thoughts on the Firefly Funhouse and in the Boneyard match that happened at WrestleMania. So just to give you guys a bit of a heads up, so if you're looking, again, details is what we did not get into and all of the small things that happened on Raw and SmackDown. But hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'm not going to drone on too long. We talked for over an hour and a half on those topics, so I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll be back on Tuesday with your Monday Night Raw review. Aiden will be coming to you in the next couple of days with your SmackDown review, so look forward to that. And then, of course, Nostalgia will return in a live format next week with your NXT, AEW, and all of that as regularly scheduled. So, guys, thanks so much for listening. If you want to, head on over to patreon.com and get an ad-free experience. You can do that. Just for $1 a month, you get over hundreds of episodes ad-free. Shout out on the show and much more. So if you also want to help out the show, a couple of easy ways. You can do it on Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show, or you can do a little shopping on Amazon. If you love Amazon like I do, especially these days, head on over to the website and click on Support the Show. And then there's a banner that has Amazon. If you click that banner, it's just a great way to start there because what it'll do is anything you normally buy, it'll kick back a portion of that to the show. There's nothing hidden or extra or anything like that. It's just a way to say to Amazon, hey, this website sent you there. Send the WWE Podcast a portion of what Amazon would have normally made. So I really appreciate those of you that have done that. Helps keep the costs down here because, believe it or not, people think podcasting is really inexpensive. No, because there's hosting fees, equipment, and software that you have to purchase. So, guys, thank you for supporting the show in any way that you do, and continue to tell a friend if you love the show, or if you hate the show and you're like, oh, this sucks, you got to listen to it. That's fine too. Whatever you want to do, but spreading the word is how this show grows. So thank you so much for listening, guys, and get ready for Anthony and I to get into depth about, he gets into depth about his opinion on Firefly Funhouse, the Boneyard match, wrestling as it is presented today, why people think that the Firefly Funhouse is one of the best things they've ever seen, and all that kind of stuff. So we really dive in deep to some stuff. And again, I know it's called Weekend Review. We do touch on the big items for this week, so I guess it's more of a topic-by-topic deep dive than it is a true weekend review, but enjoy it for what it is. I think you will. I really like this conversation with Anthony. We always have a great chemistry, and I think you'll hear that. So thank you so much, guys. As always, talk to you soon. All right, everybody, welcome to a Saturday edition of the Weekend Review as our longtime co-host Anthony DeMarco joins us. And I'm glad he's here because I want to get his thoughts on a couple matches at WrestleMania, as well as where WWE seems to be heading now that we are post-mania and we are heading into the Money in the Bank season with new feuds, new programs that WWE has told us that they're moving into, with Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt leading the pack on that. Where does Drew McIntyre go from here now that he's champion? And so much more. So, Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the show, and I'm very interested to hear your opinions on some of the Mania matches.
Good to be back, Matt. I really can't wait to get into it.
No, me either. And I really just have to ask you off the bat. I mean, as a whole, and again, this is just kind of putting a bow on WrestleMania. We've already done a full, basically 5 hours in total review of WrestleMania. But as a whole, did you enjoy WrestleMania? Do you think that it exceeded your expectations? How did you view the show?
As a whole, I really liked it. I gotta say, I was down on it when I originally heard that they were going to go ahead with it with no fans. But I really got to say that WWE kind of, for the most part, knocked it out of the park here, considering the circumstances. Like, yeah, there were some things. Obviously, the two matches, the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match, that I have some things to say about. And maybe Gronk and Mojo hosting wasn't the biggest fan of. But besides that, they really did what they could. And they had some crazy 5-star matches, like the Edge and Randy Orton match, the Kevin Owens match and the Seth Rollins match. The ladder match was excellent. Charlotte and Rhea Ripley was pretty darn good. Was I the biggest fan of Braun versus Goldberg? No, but it was exactly what I expected. I loved that Drew McIntyre won. So for the most part, I really, really enjoyed it. And kudos to WWE for putting on pretty much a B-plus show, all things considered.
Yeah, I'd agree. I definitely would agree with that. I mean, I gave it more of a B minus, but we're in the same general area of how we viewed the show. But let's dive into it, because you heard my review with Mary, you heard my review with Zach, and they were basically tag team. It was basically a handicap match, if for all things considered. It was a 2-on-1 handicap match in terms of how I viewed the Firefly Funhouse and how they did, and obviously not only their opinions, but you've heard others and justified why they loved the Firefly Funhouse match. I mean, it's difficult to even call it a match, but you've heard my thoughts, you've heard others' thoughts. I need to ask you, just tell me about this match. What did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were there elements of it that you could see why people liked? Just go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, the thing is that, like, when I was watching it in the moment, I was enjoying it more than I would have thought, and I think it's solely because Bray Wyatt and John Cena are just that damn good. Themselves are such good, even actors at this point, because like you said, it wasn't a match. They're such good actors, and they know their own characters so well that it made it entertaining. And, I found it a bit funny, like how they clearly took a shot at Jon Moxley by the Vince McMahon puppet saying that's such good shit. Like, I did find that hilarious, or I do find that they overplayed the Eric Bischoff footage for a reason. Like, it was kind of WWE, like, I don't know if it's breaking the fourth wall, but kind of indirectly trolling and wanting us to know that they're trolling. So, like, and the production of it all and the psychology of it all was pretty much amazing. Like, I can't really take that away from them. Like, for what it was pretty damn good. But why was it what it was? That's what my beef with it was, because for like a short film, it was as good as you can get, and the psychology behind it was brilliant with the whole John Cena like walk down memory lane stuff. But it's like, why was it like that? Like, there was 0 point for us to relive that. And I know, like, I heard some of your co-hosts say, like, Zach, like, it was his favorite thing you'd ever seen. Or Mary saying that, like, this is, planting the seeds for a John Cena heel turn. I couldn't understand why they were drawing those conclusions. And I think it pretty much comes down to, and I also got hinted by this, and I got this idea from listening to your show with Michael and Ashley, how those two were kind of divided on the Boneyard matches. And I think what it comes down to is that anyone who was a fan, like you and myself and Michael, pre-2007, wants nothing to do with these types of matches. Because for us, that's not what wrestling is. That's not what WrestleMania is. When we watched the main event of WrestleMania 17, Rock vs. Austin, it didn't even sniff this stratosphere. When we watched, the Royal Rumble of 2003 when Brock won, it didn't even sniff this. This is not what we grew up with. This is not what we've grown to become. But for people like Ashley and Mary and Zach, who I think they're kind of a more newer generation watching wrestling. If my memory serves correctly, they all kind of started closer to 2010. They've kind of grown up with this sports entertainment driven down your throat-esque type of wrestling. So obviously for them, this doesn't seem as asinine as it would to an older crowd like you, myself, and Michael. And I think when there's such a pure and solid divide between those two types of groups, and I believe you said it, that these are the kind of matches that, like, by and large, you either hate or you love, and there's no wiggle room, and there's not much in between. It's because of just two different groups that grew up with the old style and the newer generation.
That's a good way to put it, because this was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, even more so on a WrestleMania that is about, wrestling. It has wrestling in its damn name, and yet WWE, I've said this before, I'll say it again, they have an issue with identity, right? Their identity, that if someone had said to them they're a wrestling company, they take that as an offense, when they should actually embrace the fact that they're a wrestling company and that the way they entertain people is through wrestling. That's how they entertain people. And when you stray into a cinematic type of presentation with wrestling that on the biggest stage that WWE has to offer, it really, I think, does a disservice. When you actually add punching sounds from a soundboard into a match, you cannot tell me that is a way that does not take you out of the moment. How can you add punching sounds to the match? It's embarrassing if you take this from the perspective of this is not a wrestling match. And maybe that's the problem that people would say is, well, this isn't a wrestling match. Well, it's WrestleMania. This is world wrestling entertainment, right? So I just think that WWE, anytime that they can, runs from their identity as a wrestling company. They can strategize or spin it any way they want. They are a wrestling company through and through. And any chance they get to stray from that and try to present this in a more cinematic type of, quote, entertainment way, they do. And you saw it this past Sunday and Saturday at WrestleMania with the Boneyard match, which I actually liked a little bit more than I liked the Firefly Funhouse match, because it was a little bit more plausible from whatever that is. But the whole thing is identity, and I understand the premise of what they were trying to do with the Firefly Funhouse match. I get it. I appreciate what they were trying to do. But if through all of that, this ends up in nothing, and you heard me say this, if there's no end game here, there's no destination, and this is just a John Cena one-off, and he comes back a year later like this never happened, I mean, that would, to me, double down on the problem I have with this. There has to be an end game. Do you think that there's an end game with this, or is this just WrestleMania is just WrestleMania? This was a cool thing to do, and now there's not really any follow up to this. Do you think that there's something to this, or is this just a one off?
I personally don't, and I heard Mary saying that, like, and it's so funny because Mary actually comes up with all these great ideas that, like, gets you all excited and giddy for it, and you're just like, oh man, that'd be really cool, but then you take a step back and you're just like, oh, you can't give WWE that much credit. And I think it's the same thing here, that, like, we think of what it should be and what an actual great means to an end it'd be if John Cena comes back as a heel and he is a changed man. But, like, I think it is a one-off in the sense that we would be giving WWE too much credit if that was the means to an end, because let's be real, we probably won't see John Cena again until at least next March. I think he's completely going balls deep in this acting thing, which is fine, but why would he turn heel as a part-time guy? Once you go part-time, you pretty much stay in the same realm of a character for the long haul. It's like, when The Rock came back, he stayed as a babyface. The Undertaker, up until just a couple weeks ago, was the dead man forever. I don't think once you're part-time, you can really you can start switching from babyface to heel. And a turn of such magnitude as it would be with the John Cena heel turn that everyone has been waiting for the better part of 10 years, I don't think you could do that now that he's so invested in his acting. Because I truly believe that one day John Cena will have a mini full-time run again in WWE, kind of like The Rock did in 2012, 2013, just because it's in his blood and probably for all the same reasons The Rock came back and did it. So maybe then, but in the immediate future, I just think that this was a one-off for WWE. It was a way for them to go more in the direction of entertainment, like you just alluded to, because of the circumstances of no fans in the building. And they took it, and look, it worked with a lot of people, as we saw with your co-host, who really, really loved it. And again, for what it was amazing. As a piece of a short film with entertainment, with psychology behind it, it was absolutely brilliant. It was a brilliant piece of work. But my problem is that that's not what it should have been. There should never be something like that in wrestling. And I guess we could even tie it into the Boneyard match, where after watching the Firefly Funhouse match, I enjoyed it more, because it was just more realistic. And, the fighting sounds and, I didn't really like the Druins thing, but at least it was a plausible scenario as opposed to the Firefly Funhouse match, which was just so far out of the realm of plausibility. And I know that you have to suspend your disbelief with wrestling. That is part of the end game. But when you get to such an extent where it's no longer even possible, that's where I draw the line. So to answer your question in a long roundabout way, I think it is just a one-off and it isn't really a means to an end.
Yeah, that to me, that makes it much, much worse. And the thing is, this is madness or it's genius. And Vince McMahon toes the line on that a lot. And from what I understand, Bray obviously had a big hand in this, as did Vince in creative. And I appreciate the effort. I understand what they were going for, and I actually really, really love what they were going for. Like you said, though, it's all about how they presented it. With John Cena coming out there in reliving his moments, it suddenly, as I said before in my review show, was he possessed? Did he not have control of his own body to, in the present day, not only be able to teleport? Apparently that's a thing that you can just do, and you're also able to not have control of your body to relive your own moments of your past, or was this just a dream of Bray Wyatt? I mean, there's so many things to this that I shouldn't have to think this hard when I'm watching wrestling. And you may, some people may say, well, maybe you're just not that smart. I may say, well, when I'm watching a TV show or movie, I don't want to have to think that hard. There's some thought that you need to have when you're watching any show, typically, depending on what level of entertainment you're watching. But and you should be rewarded for, sometimes thinking through things and seeing the nuggets and Easter eggs that are in entertainment. But to this level, I mean, I called it an acid trip because that's exactly what it was. It was an acid trip that I don't want to have to dissect. I understand what they were going for. I see the nuggets, and they are brilliant, but it's a brilliance that I don't want to see put on a wrestling show. It belongs somewhere else. It doesn't, maybe on the WWE Network as a separate special, I don't know, but it doesn't belong on WrestleMania. To me, it desecrated what WrestleMania stands for. And some people right now I know are pissed, but I don't care. To me, it's hard. I appreciate the effort and the end goal and the mission. I just don't appreciate the way that they did it. I think that's the best way I can put it. For what WrestleMania has and the lineage that it has and the respect that it has and the name value that it has, to put something like this on the show. The Boneyard match was hard enough for me to swallow, although I've started to loosen up on that. The Firefly Funhouse, as brilliant as some people think it was, I don't think it belonged on this show. It was misplaced. It was just not the presentation I wanted to see. So those are my final thoughts on the Funhouse.
But I think that's what it comes down to, is that you're not debating whether or not you thought the actual presentation was well put together. That's not the debate at hand. It's pretty much is that what should be on WrestleMania? And for guys like you and myself, and from what I gather, Michael as well, who come from an older generation, that's not what we're looking for. And you said it perfectly. Those are the kinds of matches, and you could even tie the Boneyard match into this as well, that if you bring a non-wrestling fan over to watch, you will be made fun of for it. Because you could actually get people to enjoy wrestling who traditionally don't if you put them in front of like a real match, or even like a gimmick match, like a street fight, something that's in the realm of possibility. But once you get to this, that's pretty much just a short film, they say, well, this is why I'm not watching Fantasyland. And I've always been someone who, I start getting detached with wrestling. Like, my interest starts to go away when we venture off into like the supernatural part of it, like the magical land part of it. And that's why, like, I've never been a big Undertaker fan when he was the dead man. Like, I've always like respected him, and I've suspended my disbelief because I said, okay, it's one character who has these like somewhat supernatural like tactics. But I always preferred him more as the biker, as the American badass, because when I watch wrestling, I need it to be realistic. I need it to be relatable in some way. And for the Boneyard match, the thing that did save it for me a bit was that he was more of the American badass, because I've been tired of the dead man thing for quite some time now, and I feel as he's gotten older with age, it's made the dead man character more and more and more hokey. So then making him more humanized helped the Boneyard match. But even that, like the Druins coming out of the barn, like I found that really cheesy. Like obviously the soundtrack behind, but at least that there was a realm of possibility. At least that. But with the Firefly Funhouse match, like, there was nothing plausible about that. It's like you said, it's like John Cena drank acid before coming out, and Bray Wyatt tormented him for the preceding couple of hours. Like, it was just so out there, and then not only was it out of the realm of possibility and completely supernatural, but like we just alluded to, at the end of the day, I think it was a one-off, because John Cena is going to go away now for probably at least a year. And we know that by and large his full-time run is done. So I just think for me, that's not what I'm looking for in wrestling. And people who do expect that and enjoy that, it's not that they're wrong. It's just that they come from a newer age where they've grown up with the sports entertainment WWE, while you and myself and Michael and the older type of generation grew up with more of a wrestling style WWE.
Right. You're asking, exactly. You are asking somebody who has watched wrestling for 25 years, and myself, almost 25, that I am supposed to suddenly change the lens of how I watch wrestling and what I expect and what gets me emotionally invested into this just realm of just basically, a drug trip. And that's what this was. And I'm not going to change my view of how I like and enjoy wrestling because of a single match that people look at as a brilliant piece, and that it should be, watched among the new wrestlers to get an idea of what is entertaining. No, to me, again, it's two key phrases, and I said this before. It's believability and emotional investment. You cannot tell me that either one existed in this. And you may say, well, that's not what it was meant for. But how? Well, then what was this supposed to accomplish? What is it? Again, we alluded to there's no end game. Let's assume there's no end game. So then in that single night, if that's just a one-off, what the hell was this supposed to accomplish? That Bray Wyatt's twisted? Okay, we already knew that. That John Cena is a hypocrite? Okay, we kind of knew that, and previous programs that he's had with other wrestlers have kind of torn him apart. AJ Styles has done it. Even The Rock has done it to some degree. It was cool to live those moments, but not in that presentation. So if there's nothing that this accomplished other than seeing John Cena as a hypocrite, and again, you could dissect every single segment of that match. You can dissect it, and I've seen articles that do it in a very brilliant way. But I just don't see what this accomplished if there's no end game. Like, what was this for? Just to show off the brilliance of the video editing and production team? Or like, what was it, just to show how good they can be at editing things into a horror flick? Or I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the whole point of this was. I just don't understand the point of it. If John Cena goes away and Bray Wyatt moves on to Braun Strowman, I just don't understand what this does. And I don't know. I wonder, though, if this was in front of a live audience, how this match would have actually ended. Obviously, it wouldn't have been a Firefly Funhouse match. It would have been a straight-up one-on-one with some probably trickery and things like that. And you alluded to the fact that you don't like the whole hocus-pocus type of fake magic that happens. But at least when Undertaker did his magic, and this is where Mary Grader tried to have a mic drop moment against me on the show, and it just didn't work because she says, well, the Undertaker does those things, but the Undertaker does it in a believable way. He doesn't have a Firefly Funhouse where he basically has a clown house of things that he can do. Undertaker did it in a very believable way with a very believable character, and didn't do it just to do it to make people entertained. He did it in a serious type of tone that worked. Kane did the same thing. Plus, they had a hell of a backstory, right? There was a backstory that is unmatched with Undertaker and Kane in that whole story. So the fact that Undertaker used it, he used it in a much different context, and it was done in a way that was actually believable and got you engaged, and you took away the fact that, yeah, okay, there's no way this guy actually has superpowers, but he was cast perfectly in that role. So, I mean, that argument, I think, is just flushed down the toilet, but I don't know. I just don't see. What did this accomplish if there's no end game? Can you tell me?
Well, the thing with Undertaker, like, the thing also with him and his superpowers is, like, we've always been kind of, like, everyone's kind of just said, like, okay, we suspend our disbelief with this one guy because he took the hokiest of all hokey characters and made it work. So this one guy, we take it away. But I've even read, like, things like, I've even read, like, conspiracy reports to say, like, well, it's because he's been around WWE for so long that he's in with all the pyrotechnics guys, and that's why he can do these things on command, because he's been around so long and everyone likes him so much that he can help them manipulate his environment. So there's even, like, things like that I could say, like, okay, in the back of my mind, like, that's why he's able to do these things. But it's not the same thing in the slightest, because, like you said, there's been a 30-year backstory with The Undertaker. And at least with him, it's not like it's pretty much that he can strike lightning down wherever he so pleases. But, like, just because The Undertaker does it, like, don't get me wrong, I love Bray Wyatt, but, like, let's not draw parallels between the two. Talk to me in 20 years where Bray Wyatt is, then maybe. But I don't believe it accomplished anything because it wasn't a match, and John Cena is gone now. He is. And, like, I know everyone wants to think that he's going to come back as a heel, but it's not going to happen. And at the end of the day, all the things that they outlined in this match, we already knew. We already knew that John Cena was Vince's golden boy. We already knew that in some form he kind of buried a lot of people along the way. We already knew that everyone wants him to be heel and has wanted him to be heel for 10 years. We knew all this stuff. Like, okay, was it kind of cool for WWE to acknowledge it in such a point-by-form matter, in such a chronological format? Yeah, I guess it was kind of cool in the moment, but at the end of the day, why? We already knew this stuff. Like, they were just going over things that have kind of been touched on previously along the way. In almost every single feud that John Cena has had since probably 2015, which you said that, or pretty much 2015, when he started feuding with Kevin Owens, that's the first time I can remember this, that everyone he's been against has kind of slowly but surely dropped in these little Easter eggs about how you bury people and it's all about you, and it always kind of circulates around that. We saw it with AJ Styles. We saw it with The Miz. Roman Reigns, his short-lived feud with him, kind of touched on this. All the things that they touched on in the Firefly Funhouse, while very true and accurate, and they kind of brought it about in a brilliant psychological format, was unnecessary. And at the end of the day, that's what this quote-unquote match was. It was just an unnecessary presentation of entertainment that I think you hit it on the head, that at the end of the day, it was done to show off WWE's, I guess, editorial ability, their presentation ability. I think that's what this was, because there's no wrestling in this match. There was 2 moves and John Cena punching Huskus the Pig. Like, it was just something that, while it was good and psychologically brilliant, it was just something that I didn't want to see. And looking back on it, I still don't want to see because it serves no purpose. Like we'll talk about in a moment here, Bray Wyatt is moving on with his life for Braun Strowman. John Cena probably won't be seen on WWE television for at least another 11 months and probably come back as a babyface with no recollection of this match. Like, I don't think he's going to come back as a heel. I don't think it was this big means to an end plot because most of the time WrestleMania is a blow-off for a feud. So why would they extend this out for another year unless John Cena comes back and fights Bray Wyatt again, which I doubt. And just a final closing thought about like what I look for in a WrestleMania match. Maybe I'm a dinosaur, but like when I watch big time matches, I look for something that's so far away from what I saw in the Firefly Funhouse match. Like at WrestleMania 35, last year's WrestleMania, which was one of my favorite WrestleManias, my favorite match by like far and away was Batista versus Triple H. And people are probably going to fall off their chairs from saying that, but it's because that style of match, that no holds barred match that Batista and Triple H had was what I grew up with. The slow, methodical type, almost realistic type of brawl with a hint of professional wrestling thrown in. That's what I like. It's not this overproduced presentation that was Firefly Funhouse. It's not this flip, bouncing all over the place type of match that, Seth Rollins has. Those are the types of matches I have. So maybe it's me being stuck in the past that wants the Triple H Batista type matches that makes me kind of despise these overproduced matches, but that's just kind of my standpoint on it.
No, I while it wasn't my favorite match, it last year was one of my top three, yes, because it is so contrarian to the style that we have today of 1,000 miles an hour. There's no selling. There's, you don't have time to digest what the hell is going on. It's about the moves and not about the psychology, which has taken a back seat to pro wrestling, which is a damn shame because that's what actually makes you care. Today's professional wrestling audience, I think, as a majority, probably look at the wrestling product today and go, what kind of cool moves am I going to see today, right? Like, what are the cool moves? That's a superficial way to look at wrestling. It should be about two guys or two girls who have a personal issue or are fighting over a championship, what it means to them, why they're fighting, what revenge that this guy's trying to get on this guy, and what's going on, and why they're fighting. And again, as who is it? Shayna Baszler put it, it's the thrill of victory, agony, defeat. It should be no more complex than that. That's not an oversimplistic way to look at things. It has worked for decades and decades and decades and decades for movies and TV shows and pro wrestling. So I don't know why we're trying to change the formula of what is construed as a 5-star match now. You can have a 5-star match without having 450 splashes and 300 suicide dives in a match. You can do it. It's been done. And today's product is just not that. And that's why I like Batista Triple H last year. It just is a way to digest what's going on without going, wait, what happened? Wait, this guy kicked out or is fine after 3 super kicks. How is that possible? And like, there's just so much today that I'm just not a fan of that type of wrestling. It's more of an athletic performance than it is about the psychology of why these men are fighting and what makes you care about why they're fighting. And that is what we've gone away from, and to the extreme now with the Firefly Funhouse. And what scares me about these two presentations, while I didn't really, really hate the Boneyard match, there were some elements I really liked, and I liked the more realistic Mark Calloway, Undertaker. I liked that. What scares me is that WWE has gotten more positive than negative feedback from these two matches, that they're going to continue to use this format moving forward, and they're going to go, oh, see, this is the kind of crap we want to, the fans want. See, I told you. I mean, like, unfortunately, I think the fans are going to be their own worst enemy in basically feeding WWE the pat on the back that they were hoping they would get from these presentations, and now we're going to get this more often moving forward.
Yeah, like I heard Ashley actually say it on your part 1 review, how she kind of brought up that maybe to prolong the Undertaker's, career, they could have him in these types of format matches. And I didn't really mind that idea because pretty much since WrestleMania 30, I found that the Undertaker's matches have been hard to watch. maybe he had a good one with Bray at WrestleMania 31. But aside from that, I've had a really hard time with The Undertaker since around 2014. So if they maybe just cleared up like the punching sound effects and took away the background music, I could get behind it for The Undertaker. But like you said, it really kind of scares me that WWE being forced to do all their shows from the Performance Center has given them a clear-cut avenue to go down this overproduced, strictly entertainment route. And it's frightening what I saw with WWE, and maybe that's why I was so against the Firefly Funhouse match to begin with, because I knew, like, oh my God, this is what they're striving towards. This is what they're heading towards. And that's what I've kind of been toying with in my head. Like, they are really trying to get away from what I knew and loved and grew up with as wrestling. And it seems as though that in actual wrestling matches now, it's a spot fest, and then you have these overproduced type of matches. And I'm really hoping that they just kind of try and keep an old element to it. Like, okay, like if this was a one-off because of the circumstances and they were trying to give people something of entertainment to watch, I could kind of live with it because of the circumstances of the world that we live in at this very moment and whatnot. But if this is going to be something that becomes continuous even when fans are allowed back and we do return to normal life, it's going to be hard to watch. And I'm not going to be watching a lot of these quote unquote important main event type of matches because I have no interest in it. And like, don't get me wrong, like I love the Fiend Bray Wyatt, but I also feel as though that they've concentrated way too much on like developing him as almost like a movie type of character as opposed to showing what he can do in the ring. And the thing is that when he does get in the ring, he has good matches. Like the match he had with Daniel Bryan at the Royal Rumble was very, very good. But more times than not now, Bray Wyatt is just he's kind of just presented as this movie type of horror beast villain type of character. And it's just like, that's great and all. And I've loved the Firefly Funhouse for the most part, but at the same time, I also want to see him fighting in the ring. It doesn't always have to be a hocus pocus type of smoke and mirrors type of presentation with him. Like what drew me into the Firefly Funhouse originally when they presented back in May of 2019 was that he was supposed to be a psychopath with a split personality who truly believed what he was presenting. But now it's almost like that he's a supernatural villain who is aware that he has a split personality almost. Like he knows that like he can like snap his fingers and be in front of you as Bray Wyatt at one moment, but then be behind you as the Fiend at another. And we saw that in the SmackDown leading up to WrestleMania. As opposed to, I thought they were going towards just a guy who was a mental case with a split personality and would switch without realizing it. And now that they've angled more towards like a supernatural type of character with Bray Wyatt, I've lost a bit of interest. I still really like him, but I'm not going to lie, I've lost a bit of interest because of that. And it's just, it's too bad that they go down this road because at least for someone like me, if you would just kept it a bit more on the realistic side, I would have been just as invested in the character as I was at the beginning.
Whew, a lot there. I will just say that you brought up the point that they are trying to make Bray Wyatt a movie character, and that's exactly what they would want to happen, and that's what they have been given the liberty to happen, given the circumstances with the virus and everyone on lockdown and no one able to attend live events. They can just move on without any live reaction to gauge how they're doing and how the fans would receive what they're doing. I mean, yes, you have social media, but social media can be very skewed. It doesn't always tell the full story. So social media really is the only needle that they have to gauge how they're doing and how the fans are receiving what they're doing. And what the Firefly Funhouse and the Boneyard match, aka the Graveyard / Buried Alive match, did was really open the floodgates and allow WWE, Kevin Dunn, Vince McMahon, to allow them to just be what they've always wanted to be and what they would like to be identified as, and that's just an entertainment, cinematic presentation company, and that's what they would like to be known as. They would love, I mean, WWE Films, they had their own movie studio that flopped. I mean, that's what they would like to be, and now that the XFL has gone under again, really to no fault of its own, and I do feel for the players and those that were hired by the XFL. I feel bad for them. And maybe we'll see a resurrection, but I think it's pretty much dead, and they have no plans to return for season 2. So Vince McMahon is now, I assume, back full time with WWE and his full attention's on WWE, which can be a very scary thing. And if he got good reception from what the majority of reception from these two matches and how they were presented, unfortunately, I think it's going to open the floodgates to let them do this more, to try to really phase out this wrestling stuff that they just run from like it's the plague, no pun intended. Sorry about that analogy. But that's what they would love to be, is this exactly what they've shown us with these two matches. That's what they would love to be. If they could have every match just like this, they would produce it just like they did on Sunday and Saturday with these two matches. I truly believe that they would, outside of a few that they go, these two will put on a great match. They work together, But I think if they could, 75% of their matches would be produced in this type of manner. I really believe that that's how they would love to do it and be known for, and that's what they would love to change their identity to.
Well, it's funny because I grew up, when I first started watching wrestling, I would watch it with my dad because my parents were divorced, and when I was 4 years old, understandably, my mom wouldn't let me watch it. But when I go to my dad on weekends, he didn't care, and I used to watch it with him. But it's funny that fast forward, okay, I'm 25, so fast forward 21 years later, and my dad will sometimes once in a while sit down and watch it with me if he's over, and he's just like, what the hell is this? What happened to it? Or my girlfriend's dad is in his late 60s, and he'll sometimes make fun of me because he'll be like, oh, this isn't what it used to be. Wrestling at least used to be believable, and the moves used to be real. It was just kind of predetermined. Now it's not even that anymore. Now it's just completely fake. And it's true. When I was growing up, when I would argue with my friends at school who didn't like wrestling and they would say it was fake, I'm just like, no, it's not fake. It's just predetermined and staged. The moves are real. But now with these presentations, it's no, it's all fake now. Everything is fake. It's a movie. And that's why I think that's what kind of bothers me about it, is that what I used to defend about wrestling, I can't even defend it anymore. When you watch an actual wrestling match, you can tell when they take a hard bump. But in these types of presentations, they've probably done the same take 45 times over to make it just that perfect. And just in regular matches in the Performance Center, you've seen that there's way more camera work and way more camera manipulation being done with no fans. And whatever, I could let that go because it is a different circumstance, and they won't be able to do that once they return to buildings filled with crowds. But I'm kind of scared that they're going to continue with these Boneyard/Firefly type matches because of the reasons I just brought up. They are really just trying to go down a cinematic route that I have no interest in. And I found it kind of perplexing hearing some of your co-hosts say that it was their favorite thing in the world. But then when I step back, I'm just I think it's just because they don't remember, or they just didn't watch back when what was my heyday of wrestling. Even Elimination Chamber type matches now, they're not even what they used to be. Elimination Chamber matches back in the day literally looked like 6 roided up guys beating the hell out of each other in a cage. That's what it came out to be. But now it's almost like the chamber is almost baby proof, and there's lights everywhere on it, and there's, strobe lights at the top of the pods, and the glass almost seems more smooth. It's not the same thing, and I could get away with those types of things for several different reasons, but this is just so far detached from what I grew up with and what I fell in love with. I was going to give you I was originally supposed to come on to Wrestling Nostalgia this coming week, and I was going to bring up WrestleMania 20's main event with Benoit versus Michaels versus Triple H, which for me, 20 was one of the best WrestleManias of all time. But so, like, when I saw this match and I started thinking about comparing it to WrestleMania 20, when WrestleMania 20 was literally just like wrestling match after wrestling match after wrestling match after wrestling match, and a lot of those matches were technical matches. Like, one of the main events was Kurt Angle versus Eddie Guerrero, and that triple threat match was just complete, like, pure old school wrestling at its finest. And there was a lot of tag team matches back like on that card. And I just thought about, like, could you imagine like this kind of presentation just being dropped on that card? And like, because WrestleMania 20 for me is a top 3 WrestleMania of all time, like, it kind of just bothers me that, like, fast forward 16 years, this is what we've come to. And you're, like you've alluded to, the guys running the show and steering the ship in WWE are running away from something that I fell in love with as a kid, and something that I've, like, memories that I've cherished as I've gotten older as an adult. And it's just really too bad, because you know that if they really wanted to, Vince McMahon and company could put on such a great card and a great presentation like they did all those years ago, but for whatever reason, they don't want that anymore. And as a result, they're losing the interest of older fans like you and myself and Michael.
Whew, yes, man, that's funny. They baby-proofed the Elimination Chamber. That's exactly what they did. I mean, they put the padding over the steel grate that was outside of the ropes. They like you said, it really is. It is baby-proof. That's funny. But yes, when you can't tell me that HBK versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 was not as good as the Firefly Funhouse. If you're telling me that the best thing you've ever seen is the Firefly Funhouse match, I don't know what wrestling. I don't think you know what wrestling is. Like, what? I mean, just go watch movies. Why even watch wrestling? Because what you're watching in wrestling it's not wrestling anymore. I mean, if anybody would come on here and try to argue that the Firefly Funhouse was better than Michaels Taker at 25 or the triple threat match at WrestleMania 20, it's not even an argument. I mean, I don't even know what you're watching, right? So that is just, it's when Zach said that, and I love him. He's a great co-host, but my jaw dropped. I said, that's the best thing you've ever seen? So something, it didn't have anything to do within the ring. You know, the best things you've ever seen. It wasn't Stone Cold Steve Austin on any of his moments, The Rock on any of his moments, any of the WrestleMania matches, right? Hogan, Rock, Austin, Rock at WrestleMania 17. None of those were even close. So the best thing you've ever seen is Firefly. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't understand. And Zach, if you want to come back on and defend your point, you're more than welcome. From my taste and for what wrestling truly is and means, and what had drawn record sales to wrestling when it was at its peak, when it was actually believable, when, there was an entertainment part to it and some of it was cringeworthy, but the majority of what made it great were believable storylines, believable programs, matches that were, physical, that didn't involve 100-mile-an-hour pace, and that you had massive stars in programs that made sense. When was that? The Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era to some degree. That's when the product was at its highest in terms of dollars coming in, TV ratings up. So when you talk about today's product, it's a small fraction in terms of numbers and revenue from what it was back when, 97 to 2008, when they eventually went PG in 08. So, I mean, really, it's no contest. So, man, we're getting way off the bandwagon, but man, this is starting to heat me up. So, any final comments on WrestleMania or anything we've just been talking about?
Well, yeah, it's because, like, you were talking about comparing it to, like, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I've always kind of found it funny when those types of, I guess, like, guys come back from that type of era and they come face to face with the hokey-ish, like, type of characters, and they make fun of it. Like, do you remember when The Rock came face to face with Bray Wyatt and the family at WrestleMania 32, and he just made fun of them? Like, he was, I'm going to eviscerate you, boy, and you guys look like a clan. And it's so funny because when these Attitude Era / Ruthless Aggression Era type guys come back, and obviously Vince McMahon gives them a clean slate to do whatever they please because, they're legends, they expose the current product for what it is, and they poke all the funny holes in it. Like The Rock saying that Braun Strowman looked like a baby who sucked on his mama's tit too long. Like, that was funny, but it's because back in the Attitude Era, those type of hokey characters were the ones who they became the jobbers, and all of the main event guys were the realistic, humanized type of characters because this shit didn't fly back then. And like that's what made The Undertaker like what separated him from the rest because he made it work. And let's be real, like The Undertaker only reached the level of what he was, I think, when they humanized him because he peaked and came down pretty fast in his original run as the Dead Man. If my memory serves me correctly, before he turned heel and formed the Ministry. I was really young at the time, so maybe you could fill some holes in there. But from what I remember is that he got really completely over as a babyface when he came back as the American Badass and then rechanged the Dead Man in 2004. So when I heard Zach say that, I was kind of taken aback like you, because it's just like the actual wrestling parts of it isn't what is the best thing you've ever seen. It's this kind of like entertainment cinematic production is what the best thing you've ever seen. And it's almost like, I don't know, like to put a bow on it, it's just like from the era I grew up in, all those characters, when they come back, poke holes in the current product's cinematic approach.
It's just a stark contrast. I mean, it's just like, here's greatness, and here's a pretender. Like, here's a contender, here's a pretender. And that's exactly when these stars come back and people say, oh, well, they don't need to keep bringing the legends back. No, they don't. From a full-time perspective, hell no. But it's when you see them side by side, you go, I feel something for this guy, I don't for this one. And that's the whole thing. As human beings, we're emotional beings by nature. And when I don't feel emotion towards what I'm watching in wrestling, I disconnect. I mean, I don't know about you, but I disconnect when I don't feel a damn thing. And I don't like feeling that. And I don't like the fact that WWE has put more of an emphasis on the athleticism and the cool moves and what's next and what kind of reversal can this guy do, rather than building deep characters with deep stories that make sense and stars that are built on that, not on what the athletic ability of somebody is. It's important. It's important to be athletic, no question. But unfortunately it's become the dominant factor rather than kind of a subset of what a wrestler should be. To me, it's character, it's promos. That should top anything, because you talk people into arenas by promos, not necessarily by the cool matches you can have. And I don't like wrestlers talking about tearing the house down or stealing shows. No, you're not here to do that. Stop telling me about entertaining me. You're going to entertain me by talking about how you want to beat the holy hell out of your opponent, not how you want to steal the show or make history. Stop with that crap. You'll do that as a subset, beyond what you're telling me. We will know you're doing that. The announcers can tell us you did that. Don't bring it into your damn promos. I can't stand when they did that. I mean, Sasha Banks, too. When she was doing the first ever women's this and the first ever women's that, she was talking with her opponent about how she wants to make history with them. Are you kidding me? I don't understand it. I mean, but I'm done and I'm ready to move on. Anything else before we get to the current product?
Yeah, I guess it's just like, because now I've just kind of got a bit curious on it. Because you're obviously 10 years older than me, did The Undertaker only really get popular more when he switched the American Badass after his original run as the Dead Man?
So, I mean, obviously as the original Dead Man, I mean, he, from 97, 98 Boiler Room matches with Mick Foley, Mankind, the Hell in a Cell match with HBK at Bad Blood in October of 97 was, to me, my favorite Hell in a Cell match of all time, is really when I started. And so he was super popular through 98, 99, 2000 obviously is when the whole thing changed from Dead Man to American Badass, when he returned on the motorcycle in the Iron Man match with Triple H and The Rock, with Shawn Michaels as the referee. So, I mean, it was a stark contrast. The only thing that linked him, obviously, was the jacket that he came out with. That was kind of a link to the old Undertaker. So I don't know if I would say he was more popular, but Undertaker has always, and he said this, he's always been proud of himself for knowing when it's time to change and evolve, whether it's a hairstyle or change his gimmick or whatever. And so while you may say that now it's kind of a hokey thing for him to do as an old guy, I think he's recognized that, and it's kind of a greatest hits version of The Undertaker, and I'm fine with the new version that we're seeing. It's kind of a hybrid of Mark Calloway, Taker, and Deadman, and the American Badass. So, I mean, I don't know if he was more popular, but he's always learned to change and evolve. And back in 2000, when he became the American Badass, up until 2004, when he returned as the Deadman after Kane buried him, I mean, it just felt like the right time. I think people were clamoring for it as well. And people were like, hey, I miss the Deadman. And, yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. Are you asking if he was more popular as the Deadman compared to early Deadman?
No, well, like, it did answer your question because I thought that, like, people, like, him switching to the American Badass made people want the Deadman back more. So when he eventually returned as the Deadman in 2004, I felt that he was more popular than he was as the Deadman in, let's say, 97. Because people, like, missed him because he spent so much time on the motorcycle. And you know what? Like I said, the thing that saved the Boneyard match for me was that he came back as, like, this hybrid type of match. Like, or this hybrid type of character. Like, he had a hint of Mark Calloway and a hint of the American Badass. Like, for me, I got kind of tired of the Deadman thing because he was getting older. But then when he came out as he was, I don't know, it made me connect with him on a way more different level because it almost made me just kind of sympathize with the man himself and therefore making me care as opposed to a monster who doesn't talk but now is in his late 50s. So, yeah, for me, him coming back as the hybrid type of character saved the Boneyard match in some capacity.
Yeah, it was definitely the most realistic version of himself. He had elements of being Mark. He did some of his hocus pocus as Undertaker. That's worked for years. And he also had the American Badass look with the motorcycle. Yeah, it was all three. And so I was a fan of that version of Taker as well. It makes more sense. It's more believable. And coming back in 2004, yeah, people were ready. And I remember when Undertaker got buried by Kane at the Buried Alive match between him and Vince McMahon, it made total sense. See, this is good storytelling. That made sense for Kane to bury who the version of himself was, of the American Badass, to come back and to be what the fans were waiting for him to come back as. And I remember when the gong went off during the Royal Rumble match after Kane had come in and run roughshod. As the countdown went on, I mean, that just listen to that, like, 4-second pop. And people lost their minds. I mean, obviously he didn't come out during the Rumble, but it was, I mean, just Google it or YouTube it rather. It was such an amazing pop, and so you could just feel the groundswell from that and waiting for people waiting for Undertaker to come back, and he didn't even come back until WrestleMania. Like, if you remember, it was just kind of a teasing of the Deadman coming back week after week, and Kane not believing that his brother's still alive. And on all of that. So was it as great as their match in 98 at WrestleMania 14? No, I still think that story was better. But certainly, Undertaker 04 Deadman was a resurgence and a resurrection, if you will, of the Deadman. So, okay, let's get into the topic at hand of this week in WWE, which, I mean, there's a lot, but there's not. It's weird because everything here was pre-taped. As we move forward, WWE will continue to do their live events from the Performance Center, from what I understand. So I think the number one topic coming out of this, and maybe you could argue it, but I think it's Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt now seemingly on a collision course as Bray Wyatt starts to play mind games and moves on from John Cena. While people forget, about 3-4 months ago, Bray Wyatt actually attacked Braun Strowman and it went nowhere. Now we actually get a true program with these two, with Braun as champion. Are you looking forward to this? Obviously, there's a lot that they can draw from with their Wyatt family connection. How are you looking at this? Are you looking forward to Strowman and Wyatt?
Honestly, I am, and this is probably the biggest positive takeaway from SmackDown, because as I was going through the show last night, I was saying, man, SmackDown feels really dull right now. But when they ended it with this, I was pretty encouraged, and it's something that I've wanted to see for a while. Obviously, they've crossed paths several times over the past, I'd say, since the Wyatt family split. I remember at Survivor Series 2016 when Bray was on Team SmackDown and Braun was on Team Raw, they kind of had an interaction. Obviously, they crossed paths when The Fiend was feuding with Seth Rollins, and he attacked Braun, and Braun didn't, end up pursuing it for whatever reason. But I like it because, A, there's a backstory that they're going to refer to, and one of my gripes with the current creative is that they forget about things that have happened in the past. And this is something yet again that they're doing with Bray Wyatt, that it seems to be a reoccurring theme to his character, that he goes back in his memory and tries to right wrongs of his past. So I find that cool. I like that they're putting Bray back in the title picture, because I think that the way it ended, although I didn't necessarily super enjoy his run, I just hated the way it ended with Goldberg, so it's cool for him to get back into it. I think that they'll probably have good chemistry in the ring based on their skill sets. I think they'll mesh well, so I'm looking forward to the matches. And to be honest, it's kind of a breath of fresh air for a guy who recently lost a title, a world title at that, wanting it back, and something that they've gone away with in the last several years that takes away the realistic aspects to the dynamic of a competitive environment. So it was kind of refreshing of Bray saying, I want that back.
It was. It felt fresh. It is new, and I'm surprised that they're going with this right away, given that, this I think would have been, in front of fans, would have been a very desirable program that, you could say is, what's going to happen when Wyatt and Stroman lock up? And obviously, with the unknown of when the hell we're returning to normal, WWE probably isn't going to hold back, because they don't know, and they don't want to have to just sit on repetitive programs going on and on and on, and the ratings continue to go down. So they have to do what they have to do, and it's unfortunate. And there's been so many moments that have happened over the last 3 weeks that I would have loved to have heard a crowd reaction for. And but with Strowman and Wyatt, I'm interested to see how Wyatt can get into Strowman's head, how he brings him into his world. Does he do something similar to John Cena? Does he invite him to the Firefly Funhouse? Maybe not. And I think Strowman is going to be a hard guy to break. I don't think ultimately Wyatt will get the championship back. I believe that as especially at WrestleMania, winning a championship, you want it to have a long staying power. And I think with Strowman becoming champion, as we all believe Roman Reigns was going to become champion, I think we never got an explanation how the hell Strowman was just interjected into that position. There was nothing, and that annoyed me. But Strowman is champion, and it's better than Goldberg being champion. Certainly, as a champion is there every week, the championship is getting a elevation, being there every week, and not on a part-timer that I think we have honestly seen enough of over the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to this program. I'm very interested what Bray Wyatt does and how he gets in his head and what history he draws from. And obviously this seems to be moving forward to Money in the Bank. I mean, I think that's the destination. While it wasn't said, it seems to be the destination that they're moving towards. And do you see Bray getting the belt back, or do you see Strowman retaining? I know it's a few weeks out, obviously a month out almost. Do you see that Bray Wyatt could potentially recapture it, or do you see the WrestleMania win against Goldberg and Strowman being crowned there as more of an important, him retaining the title is more important than Wyatt winning it back?
This is the first time in quite a while on SmackDown where I'm not really sure where they're headed. And to be honest, I like it, because I felt that ever since they did the brand split in October, I kind of knew what direction they were going with. But ever since they put the belt on Goldberg and then Roman Reigns dropped out of wrestling until the coronavirus passes, it's kind of been unpredictable, and it's something that I've missed. And to be quite honest, I think that they were going to put the belt on Roman Reigns, 150%. And I think that Braun Strowman only has the belt right now because Goldberg's deal was a one-off. So I'm not really sure what they're going to do with it, and I don't even think they're quite sure what they're going to do with it. If I had to guess, they will throw it back on Bray because I think they do value Bray more as a main event star than Braun Strowman, and I just can't see The Fiend taking yet another loss. Maybe there's a false finish so they can extend the program a bit because, by and large right now, there's not a lot of main events like players on SmackDown, especially with Roman Reigns not there. And Daniel Bryan kind of seemingly tied in with Sami Zayn at this very moment. Maybe they could bring Sheamus back into that picture. I think a Sheamus-Braun Strowman feud is something that I would like to see as well that I've alluded to in the past. But I don't think they quite know where they're going with it. And to be honest, I don't think it's a bad thing. And for the first time in quite a while, the unpredictability on the show is something I'm kind of looking forward to.
Me too. Again, it's just something like, ooh, we haven't seen this yet. I want to know how this plays out. I think this program has longevity. You could have some kind of screwy finish, non-finish, and that's one of the benefits of not being in front of a live crowd. They're not going to get pissed off because you do a DQ finish. There's nobody there to boo it. And so people at home can go, well, at least I wasn't there to get angry about it. And you can do these types of things in the situation we're in right now. So maybe they extend this a couple months. I could see this having a 2 pay-per-view length type of program, and that's fine. I mean, the thing is, as you alluded to it, SmackDown's star power is very limited right now, unless you're going to bring somebody up out of nowhere. Maybe Big E. I know Big E. I would love to see him in some type of single situation instead of being kind of in the New Day nonsense that you and I, we all know and love that. We've gone on many rants about the New Day and what they stand for and all their nonsense. But maybe outside of doing something like that, bringing in a new star to challenge Bray Wyatt. I don't know where they go or a superstar shakeup, but we haven't heard anything about that. So with the lack of star power, I don't even know where you go beyond Stroman and Wyatt. I mean, Wyatt, where he's at and the level he's at, I don't know. And Stroman too. They're kind of on the same wavelength of tier in terms of the hierarchy of stars. I don't know where you go with the Roman Reigns loss or not being there is a big deal for SmackDown. So outside of building a new star or continuing this program, they kind of need each other right now. And maybe this does go longer than we would like, and it gets run into the ground. But I really can't blame them unless their plan is to indeed just start to elevate new talent, in which, honestly, I would probably do. Take this time to build new stars. You don't have the crowd there to stay silent for we don't know who this is or we're not interested in this. This can be the time to build a foundation for new stars in front of nobody, because you don't have to worry about the fans getting angry or disappointed of, oh my God, I just want to see stars against stars. I don't have the patience to see new guys be built up. So that's how I would do it. I'd run this program 2 months, and then beyond that, maybe build new stars and elevate guys that may not have otherwise gotten an opportunity.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very opportune time for them to maximize these unknowns that they may have on their roster. And, historically, SmackDown, even if we rewind to the Ruthless Aggression era, it was kind of built off of making new stars after new stars, because obviously in, I guess, 2002, 2003, it was kind of run by Undertaker, Kurt Angle, and Brock. But shortly thereafter, they kind of really had to change on the fly. You had Eddie Guerrero get a time with the belt. Then John Cena came onto the scene. Then Batista came over from Raw. Then Rey Mysterio won the World Heavyweight title. SmackDown has always kind of been, not to sound cliche, but when Shane McMahon was running it in 2016, the land of opportunity. And it's always kind of been that way. And it's always kind of been the theme of the show going back almost 15, 16, 17 years. So I guess they could continue with that run-on theme. I think that they're kind of just treading water until Roman Reigns gets back or until the virus passes, because I still think that he'll become the Universal Champion in a snap of a minute upon his return. But in the meantime, they could go down some interesting roads. I would love to see Baron Corbin maybe get a kick at the can in the main event picture. Not win the belt or anything, but just be around. I still think Sheamus has a lot in the tank. I'm just a big Sheamus fan. I think he's a guy right now that they've kind of treaded water with since his return. I believe it was in January when he came back. And I understand they kind of had to put a halt on a lot of things because of the virus, but he's a guy that I hope to see maximize a bit. They could always throw Daniel Bryan back in there, but I think they're going to keep him further down the card for the time being. So the options are there, but I am intrigued to see what they do with Braun and Bray. So it's not as bleak as it may seem, but it's a question of whether or not WWE will pull the trigger on trying to test some new guys in the main event picture.
I hope they do. I mean, right now, Braun Strowman as champion presents more opportunities for different matches than Bray Wyatt as champion does, because there's more heels to work with than top baby faces. Obviously, with Daniel Bryan, you wouldn't go back to Daniel Bryan and The Fiend, as you just said. Roman Reigns is MIA until further notice. So I think until they know when they're going to be coming back and when Roman Reigns is coming back, that they're going to keep the belt on Strowman until that time, and maybe they eventually do put it on The Fiend so that it's a heel versus babyface instead of face versus face with Roman and Strowman. So until that time, there's more opportunities and more different, unique matchups with Strowman as champion than Bray Wyatt. So I think probably the fact is that Strowman keeps this belt maybe more than 2 months. Maybe this, again, I think this program with Bray could go quite a ways and eventually end in Bray Wyatt winning to ultimately see a returning Roman Reigns versus The Fiend that we all thought was going to happen at Mania happen upon Roman Reigns' return when we get to a live format, which I would assume is when Roman's returning. I would assume that Roman's not going to return. It would make no sense for him to come back, after not performing at WrestleMania to then come back a few weeks or a couple months after. If the pandemic is still going on, it would make no sense. It would be, you would say, well, why the hell didn't he compete at Mania if he's back now? So to me, that's how it probably plays out. A long-standing feud with Wyatt to ultimately have The Fiend win again, to then have Roman Reigns come back and defeat The Fiend. So that's just how I think it's going to play out. In the meantime, you could have other guys trying to scratch and claw at the opportunity. And again, as we always say, all roads lead to Roman Reigns. To me, this is all built around, when is Roman coming back? Well, we don't know. Well, okay, let's continue a month, have Strowman retain the belt, have Bray Wyatt continue to be in the title picture. I think it's going to be kind of a wait and see, but ultimately I think that they're eyeing Roman, as you just said, he's going to get the belt back upon his return shortly thereafter. It'll be the pay-per-view that is preceding his return. I mean, we can all let's be honest, that's what's going to happen. And maybe it's all the way to SummerSlam. We don't know how long this is going to last. There's so many unknowns. But when in doubt, look at Roman Reigns and look at what pay-per-view's next and just assume that he's taking the belt at that pay-per-view upon his return. I mean, I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, we've been talking about him being the chosen one to take the Universal Championship at WrestleMania since Bray Wyatt brought it over to SmackDown after whatever Saudi Arabia event it was when he beat Seth Rollins for it. We all knew that Roman Reigns was going to end up there, and surely enough, he did. He had to pull out because of the pandemic, obviously, but it's very obvious that as soon as he comes back, at whatever pay-per-view follows his return, he's going to become the Universal Champion. And, by the time it is all said and done, he may have gone 2 years without a world championship or any championship for that matter. So I guess you can't really complain, but I guess what's always bothered us about Roman Reigns is that it's coming. You know that he's the end game to all these big storylines. And that's something that does put a little bit of a damper on my excitement for the Braun Bray story for me, is that you damn well know that they're just in a holding pattern and will be placeholder champions for when Roman Reigns comes back and inevitably takes the championship.
It's such a sad thing to think, but it's not that this is an assumption. This is just the way WWE has operated in the last 6 years. I mean, with Roman Reigns since the Shield broke up, this is just what's been WWE's endgame more often than not all the time. I mean, Roman's been out of the title picture for some time, but now that you feel it, anytime you feel it and you can kind of see hints of it, I mean, it's not even debatable. I mean, it's just science. Then when Roman Reigns comes back, he gets the belt. And you know what? As much as I really, really, really despise the babyface character of Roman, it would be, I think, it would be fresh to see Roman as champion in the context of, well, who's going to come up to step up to face him? I mean, I don't want to see beyond Bray Wyatt. I would like to see new talent being elevated, because right now we're talking about the same three guys. We're talking about Wyatt, Stroman, and Reigns. Wyatt, Stroman, and Reigns. Wyatt, Stroman, and Reigns. Well, let's use this time right now and when Roman is champion to build new stars, heels or faces. So I don't want to just be playing, hot potato between these three guys over the next 6 months. I would like the other guys to be made, even in a loss, to be made in the losses, and that's what I hope is what is the end game here, and not just these three guys only. So, all right, a couple of the things I want to ask. We didn't touch a ton on this week, but there's really not a lot to discuss. But WWE, a couple of times during SmackDown, mentioned the Triple H 25-year celebration that they're going to be doing in 2 weeks on SmackDown. To me, this sounds like the Vincent Kennedy award that eventually brought Shane McMahon back in 2016 or whenever that was, before WrestleMania 32. Do you think that this has an end game of something? Because to me, if they're promoting this 2 weeks out, it can't just be about Triple H. It can't just be about celebrating Triple H. There's an angle here. Because if it wasn't about him, they would just do a special on the WWE Network separate about 25 years of Triple H, and it would just be a whole separate show. So this tells me there's a program here. Now, does it end in a return? I would think so. Does it end in Triple H wrestling somebody? Probably. This is, to me, if I was to guess, I don't know who his opponent is, but I think whatever this is leads to a Triple H versus Wrestler X at SummerSlam. At least that's how I look at it. Maybe I'm totally wrong. What do you think about this whole celebration of 25 years of Triple H?
Yeah, I was actually joking about it with some friends, because for a long time, we've kind of joked that whenever Triple H has something booked in the storyline, it's he himself who has come up with it to make himself look strong. Just like a run-on joke. So when I saw this, I'm just like, oh, I wonder who came up with a celebration about himself, But, I think you're onto something there. I think they're doing it right now because they don't have a lot to work with because of the pandemic, that they're just like, okay, let's just get a guy who, as they build, is one of the greatest of all time, and you can't dispute that. So they're going to get Triple H on television, which will always draw eyeballs, at least for me. I love seeing Triple H on TV. If it does result in a match, which I wouldn't be surprised if it would, because I think they hinted that it's going to be a multi-show type of thing. It's going to start on SmackDown in 2 weeks, so it'll probably spill over to Raw. I've just been hoping for this for the better part of 4 years since Shane McMahon returned, but I really want to see a Shane McMahon versus Triple H type feud, because I just think, it writes itself. I don't really have to go into detail why a feud between them would make sense. And to be honest, I've kind of missed Shane McMahon. I've always been a Shane McMahon fan, and since he got fired by Kevin Owens at the premiere of SmackDown on Fox, I've kind of missed his presence on WWE television, and maybe if he came back in a part-time type of way like he's supposed to be, he would be more well-received as he was toward the end. But, I'm always here for a Triple H program. I'll always be a Triple H fan. For me, he's a top 3 wrestler with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin because of the time I grew up in. So, I hope it leads to a Triple H match, because I kind of missed him performing at WrestleMania. So, if it is just a one-off, then I'm here for it. But if it does result in a feud towards SummerSlam, which I could very well see, I'm okay with it too, because I just think Triple H is one of the best in the ring and is indeed one of the best of all time.
I can't dispute that. Triple H, I think, is underappreciated at times, and has had one of the greatest careers ever. Whatever you think about him personally or the like, he has been one of the most influential and celebrated stars in the history of WWE. People forget how quickly, or they forget quickly how good he was. and I think one of the top 2 heels ever in wrestling. He was such a great heel. He didn't get the cool heel heat. He was always concerned about people legitimately hating him, and that was what he went for. And I still look back and go, man, you look at the old stuff, he is so good at being a heel. And so yeah, I think it does end in something, and it could be Shane McMahon. If it is Shane McMahon, I think that is like you said, there's so much to draw from that. With Shane McMahon, obviously, and what that means with the family and Stephanie McMahon being involved. You could get this to be a family affair. God almighty, the McMahons know they love to be on TV. It could. And I hate to say it too, but Shane McMahon on TV, as much as we got sick of seeing him, I would like to see him in a match with Triple H because of the fact there's so much to draw from there. So Triple H returning to face Shane McMahon at SummerSlam. I know we're 3 or 4 steps ahead of ourselves in fantasy booking, but it's kind of, like you said, it writes itself. There's not a whole lot to do here. You can't screw this up, or at least you would have to try. That would have to be your mission, to screw this storyline up. So if it ends at SummerSlam, hell yeah. Shane and Triple H, I think that they could, their styles work well together. I think they could put on a very good match, and it's about the story here. It wouldn't be a 5-star classic as it's defined today, but I think it could definitely be, storyline-wise, a great way to, or a great addition to SummerSlam, assuming that's where the destination would be, and I hope it would be. And my God, I hope it's in front of a live audience. If by August we're not in front of a live audience, all of us may slip into a deep depression, but it really could be a great storyline moving into SummerSlam. I just don't see how this 25 years of Triple H doesn't end in a match. It just can't be, Triple H is great. Look at this highlight. Look at that highlight. Triple H talking about his career. That's not how wrestling works. So this is a means to an end. And that end may be Shane McMahon. I don't even know who would be the next batter up. I just don't. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, Triple H can have a match with a broomstick. I've always said that about him. Like, I remember how well he carried Kurt Angle at their match at WrestleMania 34. So I always draw on that for just how good he is. And I've just always liked Shane McMahon, and I think that not in a traditional wrestling match, but anything where the rules are a bit loose, Shane McMahon always just puts on just a great show. And, I thought that they were going to go down this road at WrestleMania 32 when Shane McMahon came back and interrupted the awards ceremony for Stephanie McMahon. And I always found it weird that him and Triple H have yet to really cross paths in WWE in a storyline type of way upon his return. So I just don't really see how they would go down a road besides it being Shane McMahon.
No, I think this is a slam dunk of a match at SummerSlam. And again, live audience, please, by that time. I think that's where it'll be. I don't want them to try to rush this if that's where they're going to go for King of the Ring or whatever other pay-per-views are on in July. I can't even think of it right now. But this is a SummerSlam-worthy match. And again, this hasn't even been official. Maybe it's not even a match, but I think we're on to something. I think we're pretty safe in saying it could be a Shane McMahon return. I hope that they are able to get around the fact that Shane McMahon was fired and all of a sudden he's showing up. I hope they address that. Maybe he says Kevin Owens gave me a pardon for this, or I don't know. But if Kevin Owens is a babyface, giving a pardon and a rehire to Shane wouldn't make sense storyline-wise. Just give me something. I hope they give us something as to how Shane McMahon was able to come back, and he just doesn't just show up out of nowhere with no explanation. But I don't have a whole lot of faith in WWE for those details because they don't care about those details. But all right, moving on to something else, and then I'll toss it to you for anything else that you want to talk about. But to me, there's really only just big stories this week. There's a lot of little stuff that we could dive into, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the big stuff. And that's Drew McIntyre, obviously his win at WrestleMania. We all saw the match. And then after that, we get a Big Show match that aired on Raw as the main event, even though it wasn't technically on Raw. It was just taped after Mania. And, I honestly enjoyed this match way, way more than I thought I would. Given Big Show, his age, how many matches he's had in the past couple years, I think we forget how good Big Show can be at times. And while Big Show is officially heel again, I mean, it's a running joke with Big Show and really with fans of how many times he's turned babyface and heel. He is by far the most flip-flop character in the history of wrestling. I mean, it's not even close. Somebody has done a actual count, and it's like 40-some times that he's turned heel. It's true. It's something in the 40s, and I believe it over his career. So with Big Show now a heel again, he, I think, cut a good promo on McIntyre. I wasn't a fan how McIntyre backed down initially. You know, that's usually not what babyfaces do. I know that he just had a grueling match with Brock, but you're accustomed to babyfaces saying, well, screw it, I'm still going to fight you. So I wasn't a fan of that little thing, but they eventually got to a championship match, and Big Show, I think, turned the clock back a little bit and looked decent in a match with McIntyre, making me at least believe that, oh my God, could Big Show actually win here? And then McIntyre fights Big Show for the next few months to get it back. I mean, there were moments that I actually thought they may go that road, but they didn't, and that was smart. So Big Show ends up taking the Claymore, and McIntyre retains. But ultimately, I mean, this when I had expectations of Big Show coming out, I said, oh no, right? And this match exceeded my expectations for what that's worth. And it, I think, further cements McIntyre as a legit badass to defeat Brock Lesnar and Big Show in the same night, for what that's worth with Big Show. But overall, you know what? I thought this was a good match, and it solidified McIntyre further. And I like this promo, too, at the beginning with, I don't know who the interviewer was, but overall, this was a good segment. What did you think?
I really liked it, and Big Show he's basically a legacy star now, and what I like about seeing Big Show now, in contrary to, like when Kane and Undertaker come back, is that you could make the case that he's better in the ring now than he was in his quote-unquote prime. And you can't say that a lot, but he's lost, over 100 pounds since his quote-unquote heyday in the early 2000s. And he still can cut a mean promo, and I know the whole heel babyface turn thing, but to be honest, I guess it's just because I like Big Show so much that it doesn't really bother me. And then he can come back and put on a good match with Drew McIntyre, and my God, like, the way that they've executed on Drew McIntyre, like, I remember bringing it up in, I believe, December with you, that my dream would be to turn Drew McIntyre babyface, win the Royal Rumble, then beat Brock Lesnar. And they've literally done that to a T. And, I was watching WrestleMania with my girlfriend, and I literally said after Drew McIntyre won and beat Brock Lesnar and became champion, and you know that the crowd is behind him. You know that if there was a crowd, there would be cheering for him. There'd be no boos. And just based on the reaction they were giving him before, this pandemic hit hard, when he won the Royal Rumble, when he beat the shit out of Brock Lesnar on Raw. They've literally booked Drew McIntyre the way that they should have booked, or that they wanted to book, Roman Reigns. In the sense that, think back of what Drew McIntyre was when he returned in 2018 with Dolph Ziggler, I believe in May or April of 2018, whenever it was. And he got over as a monster heel for a year and a half and was slow burn, slow build, and the crowd organically got behind him naturally. And then they didn't just do this crazy flip on a dime to a babyface. It was kind of like this slow, methodical turn over the course of probably even over a month that only really culminated at the Royal Rumble when he Claymored Brock out of the ring. There wasn't like a defined moment of when he turned babyface. There was this gradual thing of like almost WWE saying, okay, let's test the waters on if they would, get down with him as a babyface. And then when he eliminated Brock at the Rumble, they knew like, okay, they're in it now. And just the way that they executed with Drew almost perfectly is the way that you almost think like that's what could have been with Roman Reigns back in 2014-15 if you would have just done it organically and not rushed into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the template of Roman Reigns is the template that you would use to not ever duplicate. I mean, the Roman Reigns template we could go into, but a million reasons why the Roman Reigns template didn't work. But Drew McIntyre, again, his story is different. He's not a guy that was just chosen by the company, even though we all know the story when he first came up of Vince McMahon, blatantly choosing him as the chosen one. I think that actually worked in his favor. Rather than trying to hide it with Roman Reigns, they brought it out into the open of saying, yeah, I was the chosen one, but then I got too big for my own head. I got in my own head. I was making bad decisions, and WWE fired me. And it's a great comeback story. People love comeback stories. Drew learned more in his 8 years away than he ever did in WWE in his time there. So it's a great story. He's a likable guy. He seems genuine. He cuts great promos. Unlike Roman Reigns, which still has yet to cut an A-plus promo in his how many years of being, quote, the top guy, has yet to cut a promo that gets me in my guts and goes, damn, finally he cut it. Never has he done that. And Drew McIntyre on a weekly basis is cutting promos, maybe not A+, but certainly are easily understood. They connect with you. They feel authentic. And there's just so many reasons why the Drew McIntyre story may parallel Roman, but it's not the same given the backstory that Drew McIntyre has, the ability on the mic that Drew McIntyre has, and just the natural presence he has. Doesn't feel like he's too cool for school. He doesn't feel like he would rather be anywhere else but there, which Roman Reigns, on how many weeks that I felt that he's just kind of going through the motions. He doesn't feel like a robot, right? But Drew McIntyre, his story is just easily understood. It's likable. Yeah, I actually feel bad for the guy that he was able to, or not able to, celebrate in front of fans and have that moment, that crowning moment. So I think that the fan support will be that much greater when he is back in front of a live audience. Which, I mean, the first live show back, I think, and I think Ashley said this, it could be WrestleMania, Monday Night at Raw after WrestleMania type of environment. People are going to be jacked. I hope that WWE, whenever this live show is, whenever the hell it happens, maybe June, July, August, I don't know, whenever it happens, they need to build it as big as WrestleMania. And that's, I don't think I'm understating it, because they could pop a rating that is maybe the biggest in years if they stack the show, if they build it as the WWE, the fans and then the superstars are back together after weeks or months or however long it's going to be, and Drew's going to be there. Maybe Austin appears. I mean, Austin seems to be kind of back more often than he has been in years with WWE, doing nostalgia shows or Raw reunion shows or whatever he's doing. You could really, really make that first show back in front of a live audience a special thing and build it and promote the hell out of it, and make it a night that is, it's the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania delayed, and you could have Drew McIntyre have a special moment. You could have Braun Strowman have a special moment. Whoever you're trying to build at that time, you could really use that opportunity, that platform, and the eyeballs on the product, and the people excited that they're everything's back. You could do a lot with it. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. I hope it's not just a ho-hum, oh, by the way, next week we're finally live in front of you guys. No, this needs to be a special time, given all and how long we've all been cooped up. So I don't know when that is. Again, we all don't know, but I don't know. That's my thought on what they should do with that first live event back. It could be really special and huge, and the fans are going to be jacked.
So, Matt, before we close things out here, I have a question that kind of piggybacks off of the Drew McIntyre thing, because obviously Drew has a very similar look to Roman Reigns, so it's a guy that makes sense why Vince McMahon got behind crowning him the WWE champion. Do you think Drew McIntyre's rise to what I think can be a top-tier babyface for several years if they play their cards right? They could ride this Drew McIntyre wave in and out of the title picture as a babyface for up to 5 years, I believe, with how good he is in the ring and on the mic and how he's finally found himself in this role. Do you think Drew McIntyre kind of realizing this, which the company has kind of missed since John Cena came out of the spotlight? They kind of had a rotating cast of top babyfaces at the helm of WWE. Do you think this could maybe sway them to consider turning Roman Reigns heel now that Drew McIntyre has ascended this high?
Oh my, the Roman Reigns heel question. there have been so many times over the last 5 years that I've said this would be a perfect time. This would be the perfect opportunity. They are missing the boat if they don't turn them here and here and here. And I've seen it over and over and over, and I've been burned many, many, many times of when I say I think they're finally going to do it. They're setting up to possibly do it, and they don't do it. And it's just Roman Reigns as usual, Mr. Video Game type of moveset. He's still great in the ring. He's still great in the, that's never been the argument that he's good in the ring and he's athletic and he's got a presence. But as many times as I've said, this would be the perfect chance. He could work with so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. I don't think they're ever going to do it. He's too ingrained in the fabric of what WWE stands for now, and that's the charity and the kids' cancer visitations and all that, given what he's gone through. He's the perfect corporately selected guy to be what they want the company to be and represent, and that's this soft, put a smile on your face, throw up in your mouth type of feeling that the company likes to bring out. I mean, hell, look at Stephanie McMahon coming out on both nights of WrestleMania talking about how they put smiles on faces. Shut up. I don't, stop trying to be a damn charity. But unfortunately, that's what they are, and Roman Reigns exemplifies that to a T, so I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't. I'm tired. I've given up on them ever trying it, and maybe I shouldn't let my guard down. Maybe that's where they're going to do it, is when I least expect it. I don't think so. As much as I would do it, I would have pulled the damn trigger the night that the fans in Philly booed him at the Royal Rumble in 15 and flip off the crowd and just go mega heel from there. It would have blown the roof off. That would have drawn mega money, especially with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania that year at WrestleMania 30. It would have absolutely, I think, torn the house down. That would have been the night to do it. But alas, I mean, we're here now. At this point, it ain't happening, given everything that he stands for and what the company represents. And they put that above everything else. They put the brand above everything else. Even if it's the right decision to turn somebody heel, they're worried about their damn brand. And Stephanie McMahon is above all else. So as much as I would love it, the good part of this is I think Drew is going to be, and could be that guy, I think, more than Seth Rollins ever could be. Even in Seth Rollins in the moment last year of conquering the beast, I never ever connected with his babyface pandering wee character. Never did. It just never felt right because it was forced, and he has a sniveling voice and he has a great presence for a heel character, and he just felt like a heel playing a babyface. Drew is a naturally likable guy that is credible. He looks like a monster. He cuts authentic promos. There's nothing really, quote, fake about him. It just all screams real. And I think he could be the top guy or a top guy for the next 5 years. I mean, he just has that ability. So to answer your question in short, Drew could be the guy, one of the top guys for the next 5 years, but Roman turning heel for all the reasons I just stated, unfortunately, I don't think so.
Yeah, you're probably right. I just kind of thought about it because ever since John Cena bowed out of the main event picture, I guess in 2013 really is the last time he main evented WrestleMania with The Rock, they've kind of been searching for a top babyface, and while they've tried to force it with Roman Reigns, for one reason or another, they've always kind of tried to, phase in a new guy and test the waters. It was clear they tried with Seth last year to be a top babyface. Dean Ambrose for a short-lived period on SmackDown when he was WWE champion. AJ Styles a little bit, Daniel Bryan. But aside from Roman Reigns, who, for one reason or another, because of either injury or his cancer or just the crowd rejecting him, hasn't really fit as that top babyface, I just think they have a guy like Drew now who is still in his early 30s, and I think has the look, and we know for a fact Vince McMahon once viewed as the chosen one. I think they could really have the next top babyface here with Drew McIntyre. So I kind of just thought about, because, well, they have their guy now in Drew with the look that Roman Reigns has and the look that, Vince McMahon values. Maybe this could sway them to turn Roman Reigns because they have a guy to replace him in that role. But you are probably right that they'll just keep Roman Reigns for SmackDown and Drew for Raw. But I just hope that they keep Drew as this babyface role, because he's found his niche, in my opinion, as this top babyface. And quick note on Seth here is that I think you're right. You and I were talking about, even when he was Universal Champion last year, that the pandering was kind of too much. And I think that for as great of a career Seth has had today, this most recent role he's in as the Monday Night Messiah is the greatest he's been, and this is what fits him perfectly. Like, to be honest, one of my favorite parts of WrestleMania was his entrance, walking out literally like he was Jesus Christ walking on water. I found that hilarious.
Agreed. I know some people, one of my co-hosts said that, I didn't like he wore white. I said, but that's the whole point. He views himself as almost a religious symbol. That's the idea. You don't need to necessarily wear black. That would be just a self-realization that, I'm the bad guy, I'm going to wear black. No. It's the delusion that he's wearing white that makes him even more of a dark character because he thinks he's indeed a religious type of figure. That's what makes it great. And I agree. Coming down with his hands in like a prayer type of formation, and maybe he changes his music too. I wouldn't mind him altering his music to not be the burn it down thing. I mean, because his characters change so much that I would like the music to maybe also follow suit. And we'll see. But right now, the music seems to not fit quite what he's doing. But I agree. That WrestleMania entrance and the match itself, I think, to me, that was the match of WrestleMania, was Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins in terms of the quality of in-ring, the pacing, the story. That, to me, was the number one match. But anything else that we didn't touch on before we close things out here?
No, I think just to kind of put a bow on it all, I think that WrestleMania, for what it was very, very good. The majority of the matches I really liked. I thought WWE did a hell of a job considering what they had to work with. The Edge and Randy Orton match was terrific. Obviously, the Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins match probably stole the show on both nights. And I think just to say, us, criticizing the Firefly Funhouse matches, and to the extent the Boneyard match, was just us saying that it wasn't bad. It was just a presentation that we aren't looking for from professional wrestling.
That's exactly the way it was. I mean, if you're going to sum it up, it's all about presentation. So if you were looking for a cinematic type of, I can suspend my belief to an insane level, great. You enjoyed it. You probably loved it. You thought it was a genius move. But for the rest of us that are true wrestling fans that enjoy the in-ring product and back to basics of great stories and good in-ring action, but also deep characters that have a message to convey and a story that they're trying to tell in the ring. I don't need the insane amount of hocus pocus that went on, and it was really just a shock to see something that unbelievable on a show that you've been watching for 20 plus years. I mean, maybe that's the best way to sum it up. So, well, it was great to talk with you, Anthony. It was finally getting on the show. I know that your schedule's crazy. My schedule is kind of all over the place as well, and we'll make this work as we all navigate through this insane time of just I don't even know what day it is anymore. Everything's kind of just together in one day. It feels like it's just been like one long week, and it's been 4 weeks. It's just a crazy time. We'll find time again to do this as we move along, and you make sure you stay safe. And I know that you are in a job that you could potentially put yourself at risk, but I'm sure you're taking precautions.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. We all just got to get through this tough time, and hopefully we see a light at the end of the tunnel soon. But you take care and talk soon. Absolutely. Thanks, Anthony, and we'll be in touch soon for sure. Take it easy. You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.